Good afternoon, Trump's family. Thank you for always watching and subscribing to the channel. Every channel subscribe is my motivation to work harder. Alright, now we will come to today's news. And with revelations that took place this last week, with us finding out, of course, many of us already knew this information. And it was probably pretty widely known. But the FBI's interference in the 2020 election, right? What they did was to help suppress information, especially pertaining to the Hunter Biden laptop story. This was made publicly known by Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook, telling us they're telling Joe Rogan at a time that the FBI had come to his company to tell them that they need to make sure they watched out for Russian interference in the upcoming election. Specifically Ashley Biden's diary, and of course, a Hunter Biden's laptop, which were the main point. And remember, every intelligence officer or intel head, or whatever, all came out, like 50 of them right now, just as Russian disinformation was all an attempt to make sure that social media would silence that story, that the everyday American would not have the ability to know what was going on. Two major media outlets blacked it out, along with social media. And so 2 weeks up before the election, this story hits with the laptop, and it gets a total blackout. Many people were polled after the election, and were asked, if you had known about the 100 Biden laptop, how would you have voted in 2020? And the vast majority said they would have voted for Trump. They would have changed your vote to Trump. Well, Donald Trump decided to come out on his Truth Social platform today and lay out this information, calling for a review in the election. I don't know what that would look like. But we'll take a look at his truth posts in just a moment. This is Trump over here. On his Truth Social, he says this. He says, so now comes out conclusively that the FBI buried 100 Biden laptop story before the election, knowing that if they didn't, Trump would have easily won the 2020 presidential election. This is massive fraud and interference at a level never seen before in our own country. The remedy is to declare the rightful winner of, and this would be the minimal solution, declare the 2020 election as a redo. And we have a new election immediately. I really don't know what that would look like. Would we automatically go ahead and start printing out ballots with Trump and Biden? I don't know what that would look like, if it would be held in the midterm or not. But it's an interesting way of viewing things, and things that have currently taken place. And then you would have to think of that there were some, there's a lot to thought that would go behind us and how this would pull off. And again, if it would be allowed to be pulled off, to see that's the issue. Right? What we've currently seen is the current regime right now, having its potential, what would you call it, the potential rival of this current political party, being investigated and possibly being thrown in jail. This is what this banana republic is currently doing. This regime, third world desktop dictator, is doing right now. They would not allow a redo of the election. They wouldn't do it. They would make sure that Trump would be taken care of one way or the other. And you guys know that it's true. This is this regime. The people, the globalists who don't want him near the Oval Office any longer, would go to extraordinary lengths to ensure that he is never present again. So I like the doozy as a buy Trump, I pray for him every day to make sure that him and his family are protected. I encourage you guys to do the same, and also pray for our leaders, current leaders in this country as well. That God would reawaken their heart to see the evils that they have been committing. Alright folks, so we know that we're in a recession. Obviously we've seen the GDP numbers, and we see the economic situation deteriorating not only in the United States, North America, but Europe as well, the Western world, in China, the Eastern world. We are seeing a global economic slowdown, and some are saying it's much worse than a slowdown. That is the fact of the matter. It's obvious, we can all see it. And another thing that we clearly know is that it's not over just yet. Look, historically, recessions aren't just 2 consecutive quarters of economic contraction. Recessions have an aftermath and afterlife. The idea that the recession or the economic crash is over because the 2 quarters are finished is totally wrong. Recessions sometimes lasts a year and a half, over 500 days of continued economic slowdown. This is something that most people know, most people are honest and aware of. And of course, the point that I'm trying to get to, the most frustrating point, is that most people understand this, except for Joe Biden and the current administration, probably the most important group of people who need to be real about this stuff, and we're getting ahead of it, are in complete denial. We've been talking about Joe Biden's agenda. They just passed a tax increase along with more government subsidies. And then immediately after that, he takes executive action on student loan forgiveness, which could possibly have a taxpayer price tag of nearly $1 trillion. And for the most part, we've been talking about whether or not this is good policy and what kind of effects it's going to have. But really, screw the policy. The conversation we should be having, the most important conversation, is the economic impact. Considering the timing, the Biden administration is operating in fairytale land. They are in total denial and most likely leading a path that is going to make the endgame economic fallout much worse than it should have been in the first place. I mean, the entire almost 2 years of Joe Biden's administration follows that exact trend. They're lying to you because they're playing politics instead of doing the right thing. And now, ahead of the midterm, where Joe Biden should be in synchrony with Jerome Powell and the Fed trying to reel in inflation, the Fed's going one way and Joe Biden's pulling them in the other direction, and it's making the mess a whole lot worse. This is what we got to talk about, folks. My apologies again for the long intro, but we got to talk about the continued fiscal insanity coming out of this administration. Got some stuff to get into. So let's roll the tape. Alright, folks. So like I said in the intro, the people know, I showed you guys that over 90% of CEOs believe that we are currently in a recession. Yet apparently, Joe Biden continues to deny it. We also have an NBC poll showing 68% of American voters believe that we are in a recession. Joe Biden continues to deny it. But folks, it is an undeniable fact. And well, just earlier in the month, Joe Biden was taking a victory lap over the economy. Look at the jobs report, even though it's just a basic summer jobs, boom, look at inflation at 8.5% down to 0.6%. We've basically won the war. He claimed, look at the stock market roaring back. Joe Biden says, well, not exactly, because the reality is just like I said, back then nothing has changed. Joe Biden's preemptive victory lap at the start of August may have led to a surge in the markets. But once again, reality hits and we're right back down where we were on Friday, the S&P shedding nearly 3.5 points because, like I said, folks, the fundamental facts, the fundamental situation remains the exact same. Fed Chairman Jerome Powell is still going the same direction. That's quantitative tightening and demand destruction with higher rates. Everyone listen to this. Coming up, Fed Chair Jay Powell pushing back against the pivot, signaling higher interest rates all to stamp out inflation, and it is sending stocks much lower and magnifying that inverted yield curve. But first, we begin with the big issue. Chair Powell will taking center stage in Wyoming. Restoring price stability will likely require maintaining a restrictive policy stance for some time. The historical record cautions strongly against prematurely loosening policy. The Federal Open Market Committee's overarching focus right now is to bring inflation back down to our 2% goal. Price stability is the responsibility of the Federal Reserve and serves as the bedrock of our economy. Without price stability, the economy does not work for anyone in particular. Without price stability, we will not achieve a sustained period of strong labor market conditions that benefit all. The burdens of high inflation fall heaviest on those who are least able to bear them. We are taking forceful and rapid steps to moderate demand, so that it comes into better alignment with supply and to keep inflation expectations anchored. We will keep it until we're confident the job is done. Alright, Joe Biden is celebrating jobs reports while the Fed is actively working to slow down the economy, which is going to lead to job losses. The Fed is hiking rates, pursuing demand destruction in an effort to bring down inflation at the 2% level. And Joe Biden is spending trillions of dollars. The Fed is warning about the short-term economic outlook. And Joe Biden is telling you that it's a historic economy, that his economic plan is working, that everything is back on track for slow and steady growth, when most likely we're not even close to the bottom. And this has been my issue with Biden since the start. He ran on economic stimulus, passing once again trillions of dollars in spending in his first year when it was totally unnecessary. He lit a fire under the inflation crisis. And he continues to do it. Economic conditions continue to deteriorate, and he continues to make them worse and just deny flat-out reality. Joe Biden's taking victory laps for the slight reduction in energy costs, even though they're basically double what they were before he took office. But yet again, he's ignoring the fact that there's massive warning signs ahead. This time from Europe, Eurozone gas price benchmark and German 1 year ahead, power price, that's 700 that you see on the chart. I think that just hit 1000, by the way, showing a parabolic surge in German energy prices. This applies to France as well in the United Kingdom. And this is what people are warning about: the European winter energy crisis. That's right ahead, folks. The euro continues to tank, which is really bad for American markets. Now we're seeing an energy crisis potentially about to hit Europe. And if you think that America is insulated from these economic troubles, you are sadly mistaken. China's economy is on the brink of collapse as well. And if you think that America is insulated from that, once again, you are mistaken. The reality is Europe is headed into crisis. China's already in crisis and the Fed hasn't even begun tightening. The Fed has been sleeping at the wheel. Jerome Powell has been sleeping and he's moving very slowly and very cautiously, which is sort of kicking the can down the road. But the end result is going to be the same high interest environment, a jobs recession, an earnings recession, and possibly continued inflation and another gas crisis. This is what Joe Biden is telling you is a historic economic recovery. And this is why his most recent spending spree is so incredibly irresponsible. He's playing politics instead of doing the right thing for the average citizen and average American consumer. This right here is the real story and shows you exactly who Joe Biden is. He is choosing to actively sabotage the Fed's actions. And that's why we've been covering even Democrat economists calling him out publicly on the record that he's, quote, pouring fuel on the inflationary fire. This is the most economic illiterate president I have ever seen. It's already bad. He's making it worse, mark my words, and at the same time he's celebrating and patting himself on the back, and millions of ignorant lemmings are falling for his propaganda. If you ask me, folks, that is evil, and I pretty much guarantee you it's going to backfire spectacularly. Thank you very much. WWG1WGA. Give me your thoughts below and hit subscribe.